Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're just waiting for people to come in. We will get going in about 30 seconds. Thank you for being here. Again, for those of you joining us, thank you so much for joining us. We're just waiting for our numbers to go up. We have about 60 people who said that they would be participating, and we will get going as soon as we have people in. Should be about 30 seconds or so. However, it looks like we're stuck at 32. Maggie, I think you can start. Yeah.
Great. Well, tonight's night is it's a welcome night. And so our goal here is to just say hi to all you new to Newton South families and welcome to the high school. We are so excited to have you. I am one of the PTSO co-presidents. Barbara Tabatia is the other co-president with me this year. And we represent the Newton South High School PTSO. The PTSO stands for Parent Teacher Student Organization. So by being a parent, a student, a guardian, a faculty member at Newton South, you are automatically a member of the PTO. And we are all here to just make these 4 short years of high school better. Our goal is to build community, support our teachers and administration, and provide communication as well as support our students. So the one thing we really want to highlight tonight about the PTSO is communication. We send out a newsletter every Sunday at 6 p.m. We've sent out a couple newsletters already. If you haven't already received our Sunday newsletters, you can go to our website, which is newtonsouthptso.org, and sign up. There's a sign up column on the right-hand side, and you can click and select the class that you're in for communications. We try and send out information that's, sort of a critical source for our parents here at Newton South. We try to make it really scroll easy. So, if you have the time, at least scroll through it and look at some of the highlights and then see what you can get to. We know there's a lot of communication that comes. The other thing that we do is help get you all volunteering in the school. We have a lot of individuals who collectively work, dozens of committees that people serve on to just do a little bit across the school. We sort of think that lots of hands make light work. So we welcome you to join us. We have participation at whatever level is comfortable for you, maybe an hour or two once a year to a couple hours a month. Hospitality events, holiday events, working with website and communication, becoming a parent class rep, becoming part of our grants committee, or just, day of volunteers. We'll keep sending out those asks through our newsletter, so find it there. We are a organization that's funded by our members, so we have a dues campaign right now that has just kicked off. We're actively raising about $65,000 to pay for all the things we want to do, and that involves community engagement for student support, school initiatives, and community building. We do school support for department level funding, school-based programs, principal and vice principal discretionary funding, and a fund for PTO allowed school improvements. We spend money on grants for new classroom initiatives, for hospitality, for really great senior celebrations every single year. And then we spend some money on PTSO administration, like our directory and our conferencing and our website and legal fees. So if you've seen our ask, please consider giving. Any amount you can contribute is really appreciated. You can pay your dues directly on our website. And, we just hope that at some point during the year, we can meet you, you can meet us, we can partner with you. We're here for questions. If you need something, reach out to us anytime. Our email is co-presidents@newtonsouthptso.org, or just check out our website, newtonsouthptso.org, and it's got a lot of information. You can find a little bit of everything there. So welcome to Newton South. We're excited to have you here. Barbara, do you want to add anything, or should I pass it off to Tammy?
No, I think you summed it all beautifully. I did put our website in the chat for anyone to take it down, and to reiterate that volunteering is such a great way to get to know the staff and the other parents at the school. I really do hope people think about doing that. So I look forward to meeting everyone and having a great year.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Barbara and Maggie, for being my co-presidents of the PTSO. I say this all the time, and I'll say it again. I'm so fortunate not just to have our PTSO, but also our boosters. We're represented by Melissa here, who you will hear from in a second. I've been so incredibly lucky to have really, really good partnerships with them. So thank you, and thank you for being here tonight. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Tammy Strauss. I am the principal of Newton South High School. I'm actually going to my 4th year of being principal. It feels like I started yesterday, but it has been 4 years. I have done everything from being an assistant principal to a dean to a teacher for many years. So I'm just excited to have the opportunity to welcome your student into our school. You're going to hear a lot of information tonight. Don't worry, you're going to hear that repeatedly. Your kids are going to hear that repeatedly. We're going to try and give you some information, but as questions pop in your head, if you could record them in the Q&A section, we will do our best to either answer that question live and or answer the question directly to you. We will be monitoring the chat. With that, I'm going to pass it off. I have a team of people with me here. And know that Newton South is a very, very large place. And there's no possible way that I could do any of this alone without my core group of people. And they're here with us tonight. You have the pleasure of having all of them, actually. So I'm going to start with my vice principal, Jason Williams.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Williams, the vice principal here at Newton South. I am also entering my 4th year. Tammy and I joined together, and we ride together since. Unlike her, though, I do not feel like I started yesterday. It's been a good full 3 years, but I wouldn't call them short necessarily. But either way, my main role at the school is to help out with the logistics and keep things running and to serve as the main communicator of the school. So you've already heard from me at least twice, if not 3 times. You'll probably hear from me again this week. And then there's also a weekly newsletter that I send out every week on Sundays that has more information about what's going on in the school, of all the calendars, the schedules, and all of that stuff. So that's really my role summed up, and you'll hear a lot from me later. But I'm going to pass it along to the dean, starting with Mark Banks.
I didn't know it'd be me. Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Banks. I'm the Dean of Goldrick House. This is my 13th year as the Dean of Goldrick, but my 20th year overall in education. I was an English teacher and now a dean. So I am very excited to welcome your 9th graders here to Newton South. And, you know, one thing that we will say to the 9th graders that I always say every year to the 9th graders is, as you come into the building, you know, say hello to people. I say hello to everyone. So the piece of advice I give to 9th graders is just say hi. A simple hi, hello is what brings our community together. And so I say hi to every single student I pass in the hallways, trying to build a larger community. So you'll hear from the other deans, but you'll also hear that we work very closely together. So I think that's a theme you're going to hear throughout the night, that the deans are always chatting with each other, here to support all of our students, not just the students in our house. So with that said, I will pass it to my next door neighbor, the Dean of Wheeler House, Meg Martin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Martin. I'm the Dean of Wheeler House. I was an English teacher at Newton South from 2005 until the 2019-2020 school year when I became the Dean of Wheeler House. As an English teacher, I taught in the global cohort program. I ran and taught in the core cohort. I taught honors, CP, ACP, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And I've really loved getting to be able to help students in a different capacity as a dean navigate all aspects of school, whether it be social or academic, extracurricular. A tip I always say to students, and by extension, parents and caregivers and guardians, is to have your student find a person, whoever that person is, whether it's a dean or a guidance counselor or a teacher, the nurse, a campus aide, one of the custodians. Having somebody in the building who knows who they are, that they can go to in times of struggles or success, that's a really important connection to have. So as family members or caregivers of either kids who are new to South or rising 9th graders, it's a great thing to ask your student about midterm, end of term 1, hey, who's your person? And if they say, you know, oh, my guidance counselor is amazing, they always say hi to me. Or, you know, my Spanish teacher is just great. She always checks in on the day that she knows I have a test. That's great. If your student doesn't have somebody by then, that's a great time to reach out the guidance counselor or to maybe the dean, and we can help maybe connect them to a club or another person in the building that has like interests. But South is a big school, but it's a really special place where we really want them to find their spot. So don't hesitate to partner with us. We really enjoy the homeschool connection. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ted D'Alessandro, the Dean of Cutler House.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ted D'Alessandro. I'm the Dean of Cutler House. I've been at Newton South for 23 years, entering my 23rd year. 21 of those as a special educator and a football coach. This is my second year as the Dean. One thing I always like to tell everybody is get involved. We have so many wonderful offerings here at Newton South, whether it's sports, clubs, theater, music. I mean, our club selection is just wonderful for all kids to get involved and do as much as you can as of the extracurriculars as possible. And that's just going to make your experience at Newton South just that much better. The other piece I'd like to say is that the deans are not just disciplinarians. We are pretty much advocates for the students and their families at this school. And we don't no longer want to be looked at as just disciplinarians, but we're going to advocate for the students and we're going to work with the families to make this the best experience possible. With that said, I am going to introduce Caitlin Brown, our wonderful Dean of Goodwin House.
Thank you, Ted. And I'm glad you waited because I have a dark dog barking. So if you hear that, I do apologize. He's a little dog with a lot of personality, but welcome everyone. We cannot wait until next week and we get to see students. We're thrilled to have them back. We are counting down the days. My name is Caitlin Brown. I'm the Dean of Goodwin House. This is my second year at Newton South, but my 20 plus years in education. I've had a variety of roles from classroom teacher to athletic director to assistant principal, and now dean. And I am thrilled to be part of this team. It's such an incredible group of people, and South is just a wonderful community. So we're welcoming all of you. And my tip of advice for families, caregivers, students is don't be afraid to ask questions. There are so many people here who care about you, and we don't know what you're experiencing unless you tell us. So ask those questions, be curious. If you want to start a club or you have questions about how to better handle your homework, we are all here to help. And so there's a variety of people here to help. And for families, don't hesitate to reach out to us and ask us questions. So we're thrilled to see and meet all the students. And I am going to turn it over to our PTO, Boosters Club President, Melissa, who will talk to you about the Boosters organization. And we're so lucky to have such great parental support.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Waltuck. I'm one of the co-presidents of the Booster Club. Becky Harris is the other co-president. And basically, the Booster Club is the PTO for athletics. So if your kids are either in athletics right now at South or they're planning to do athletics, you'll see a lot of us kind of walking around and doing things in the school. We help fund some of the different equipment that the athletic needs. We help with fundraising for each sport if they need that. And we also work with the PTO, their PTSO at Newton South to build community and school spirit, which since, 2020, when no one was in the school and people were all online, we try to kind of get together everyone, whether it's students, athletes, everyone together to just bring that school spirit back. We also, you might see us at the games that are home games at South, selling concession or spirit wear. And then one of the big things that we're working with the PTSO and doing the end of October is Celebrate South Week. And we have a lot of things going on between theater and sports and just school spirit going on all week. And that's about it. I think we also have a newsletter. Don't want to forget that. So if you go onto the PTSO website, you can click on getting the Booster Club newsletter or the athletics newsletter as well. And that really tells you about all that's going on at the school for sports during the week. So you can have a big picture idea of if there's a game or if we're selling spirit wear that week. So that's a good kind of newsletter also to have on top of the school newsletter. And then one of the big fundraisers that we do for South in the spring is the Lions 5K, which is open to everyone, whether you're at South or community members. And it's usually a big event. We usually get between 400 and 500 participants, and the mayor comes, and it's this huge event that brings everyone together and raises a lot of funds for the athletic department.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to the brave soul who put the first question in the Q&A, which we are actually going to answer live because it's a question that we get a lot. The question is, and again, any questions that you have, please throw them in the Q&A part of your screen. So what is the process for connecting with and joining clubs? Is there an activity fair? Should I just show up, the first Tuesday afternoon to get the location listed to the location that's listed on the website? And our vice principal, Jason Williams, is going to answer that question.
So I was actually just talking to the club coordinator, whose name is Chris Hardiman. He's one of the counselors in Goldrick House. A couple of days ago, we used to do a club fair during the first day of school, but we've actually moved it to be early in the school year. So I just put on the calendar 2 club fairs that we're going to do on September 17th and September 24th. And what will happen is during our line block, which is a block that we have on Tuesday, which is something that we'll definitely talk about, there will be a number of clubs in the cafeteria. I think he's expecting 50 each of those 2 days to come down and show off what they do. And it will give students an opportunity to sign up for clubs. In addition, though, there's also the ability for, if once the club list gets put out, which Chris will do eventually, if there is a club that students want to create, I believe they need 5 students and an advisor, and then they just need to present that idea. They do have a deadline to do that. I think it's around like November 1st or so, or November 15th, one or the other, definitely before December. Those are also other opportunities we have too. So eventually a full list of clubs does get published to the school website, and I can also include that in newsletters as well. But we have a lot of opportunities for folks to engage in things that they like during that block.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I'm not seeing any other questions. Again, super informal session. We're here to answer your questions, but can I ask one of my deans, Dr. Banks, if you would like to talk about the house system and our house structure, the purpose, and what we really do there for our students?
Sure. So I remember when I was first hired at Newton South, I thought it sounded like Hogwarts. If for any Harry Potter fans out there, we are divided into 4 houses, and it's really to make the school feel smaller as we inch towards 2,000 students. We're divided into 4 houses with 4 deans, and within the houses, there's a dean and several guidance counselors, and some of the other deans will talk about how, guidance counselors for the most part are in one house, but there are a couple that are split between 2. Chris Hardiman, for example, is both in half Goldrick, half Cutler House. But essentially, we are your team. And and also as part of that team is the house secretary. So I was saying at the other coffee, we can call this a coffee, that the house secretary is really going to become your #1 person over the course of the next 4 years. And so that person, unlike the middle schools where you would call the middle school main office, you will want to call the house office because the house secretary will be the one to let you know, sort of point you in the right direction, if you will. So it's the dean, guidance counselor, house secretary. Those are the 3 consistent adults you'll have over the course of the 4 years. And the 4th really is your student's or child's advisory teacher. So every student is assigned to an advisory. Advisory meets every Monday for 20 minutes. And there they, get to know each other. They do community building activities. They also sign up for their win blocks and one of the deans will chat about the wind blocks. But the house is really the home base, when all is said and done. So if your child is sort of, at a loss for where to go or who to speak to, just always point them to the house office. The house secretary will either direct them to their guidance counselor or to us as their dean, and we will figure out how to make Newton South work for them.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I just want to reiterate something that Mark said, where the house system is designed really to make a very large school. We have about 1,860 students in the school, give or take. And that is a lot. And that's a stark increase from what they're experiencing in middle school, what they have experienced in elementary school. Typically, you would go to the main office in your elementary or middle school. At the high school level, you don't. You would go to your house office. You will notice that if you put me on an email, it's totally fine to put me on an email. Sometimes my response will be, I'm going to loop in the dean, or I'm going to loop in the department chair. Just with the building being so large, there are different added supports that come with that. But like Dr. Banks said, we have 3 counselors mostly located within their own house office. You have your house secretary that is going to be your best friend. Make sure your kids know who that is. They are the ones that you are reporting attendance to as well. If your student has to be out, if they have to miss school, leave for a doctor's appointment, whatever that may be. So all of that goes through your house secretary. We had a question pop up, which is a great question I'm actually going to answer. Do clubs conflict with sports practices, and when do clubs typically meet? That is a great question. Sometimes, yes, clubs do conflict with sports practices. That does happen. However, the way that we run the schedule, we run orange and blue weeks. Typically clubs are meeting on Tuesdays during that line block that Jason talked about, but there are other clubs who, because they're so interested in something, they find a way to meet outside of that time. There are kids who come in early. My building is open at 7:45 in the morning. There is supervision in our student center or our cafeteria. There's an adult supervising there. The table tennis club tends to come in and out. We have a running club called the Dream Far Club. They actually practice after school as well. So there are many other instances that students are practicing and doing it outside of school hours. Unfortunately, sometimes you do have to make choices, and you also want to make sure that whatever your child is doing is healthy and well-rounded and it's not too much. Names of the house secretaries. Jason is typing in all of the names, but also you will get notifications with who your dean is along with the house secretary, so you will learn who all of them are. Are students getting a supply list before school? Another popular question. Meg, would you like to take that for us?
Sure. So I can completely relate. I have elementary and middle school students, and I have a huge list of all the very specific things they need for every subject. It's different at the high school level. We ask that the students bring something to write with and something to write on every day to school. I know that's very vague, but that's truly what we ask. They'll get their Chromebook as well, and that's something that we ask them to bring with their charger each day. But other than that, really, it's up to the student or the teacher, who might say like, hey, in this class, it helps if you have this. But it's not like in the younger grades where you get a very specific supply list. If your student is interested in maybe how to organize his or their, assignments or things like that, that's a great question to ask the teacher. That's a great question to touch base with the guidance counselor, and we can certainly help strategies with them. But really, it's up to them. It's a general thing: charger, Chromebook, something to write with, something to write on, and something to carry those things in.
Excellent. Thank you, Meg. Not seeing any questions in the chat. Dean Brown, do you want to talk about kind of just the setup of the schedule and what those win blocks are and what they look like for kids?
I would love to do that. So for families, you might see a point in the student schedule that says win block, and that stands for what I need. And so students at the high school will have an opportunity in the second week of school. The first week is spent with their advisory, doing house meetings, just there's activities of community building. But in the second week, they will get to determine, how do I want to spend that time? And so they will work with their advisory teacher, they'll work with their guidance counselor, their dean, and other people to use a system called MyFlex Learning. And MyFlex Learning allows students to sign up on Monday morning during their advisory time and decide who they want to go with. It's their English teacher, I have an English, or their social studies, or their math, or maybe they want to go and play basketball in the field house. So it's really them determining what they need. I encourage parents and caregivers and families to have a conversation with students about what they're spending their win blocks doing. They may not want to answer you, but that's an appropriate question for you to be able to ask them, because if they, you know, that maybe they're having a harder time in their ELA class and getting their writing done, or they're doing after school activities and they're doing sports or the musical or the, you know, debate team, that this is a great time for them to use school time to get done and organized. So we definitely encourage you to talk about it. If you are worried about it and you're not getting many answers from your own student, reach out to the guidance counselor, talk to the teacher, ask those questions, but you will see that, and that will be different. Another part of the schedule that you will see when the schedules come out is maybe a directed study time. And that's another spot for ninth graders to go and use time during the school day to get work done. Now, that is not with necessarily a teacher that teaches their subject, but it is just another place during the school day in which students can get work done, organize themselves. But those are things that you might see in their schedule and you might have questions about. And if there's any other specific schedule questions, again, guidance counselor is a great resource, and or the deans to answer those questions for you.
Great. There's two questions in the chat that we're going to answer live. Mr. Williams, these are both going to be for you. The first is, when do kids get their schedules and what happens the first day of school during that morning session?
So students are expected to get their schedules by the end of the day Thursday. I say expected because I hate to promise things I don't have at least a 97% chance of assuring. So we're really working towards that. I'm working really close with the scheduler to make sure we can get any loose ends tied up. There were two lists of classes that were sent out already, which gives you like a tentatively definite and definitely tentative idea of what that schedule should be, with our goal being to try to not change anything at all if we can help it. But there might be some other things that we find these last couple of days. Short answer would be hopefully end of the day Thursday, if not at some point Friday before we leave for Labor Day weekend. You'll get a copy of that. You will follow that schedule on the first day of school. For grade 9 students, we are anticipating printing those schedules and having them in advisories for students. And then as far as the first day of school is concerned, I believe there was a newsletter I sent out recently that actually has that first day listed. So what essentially happens is there's a big welcome that we have in our field house, which is our big gym. We actually have a big gym and a little gym. We are very blessed in that sense, where we will, say hi to everybody. We'll have folks sit down by house, and then we'll break them into houses for house meetings. So they'll get a chance to meet each of their deans here. And then after that, there's a like 2-ish hour activity session where students get a chance to meet their counselor in a seminar. They get a chance to meet their advisor. And that's actually when they'll get their Chromebooks if they have signed the Chromebook loan agreement. I actually talked to Tech last week. Yeah, last week. And virtually all of you have signed the Chromebook agreement already, which is unprecedented for us. So thank you for that. I don't have to give like a cautionary tale about please make sure you sign it. I feel like out of the 460 ninth graders we have, there are only like 10 who didn't. So it's actually really impressive. But they're going to be working on that. I talked to them last week. They're working away on getting those Chromebooks ready for the advisories. And then the other piece of that session, that activity session, is going to be a tour of the school. And I should preface all this by saying that all of this is happening from like 9 to 12:30 while the other students are not here. So it's just the ninth graders and like a handful of students who are new to South but not in grade 9. And then starting at around 12:30, everyone else comes back. They have a short advisory period. And then after that, we then go into each of our 7 classes for about like, I think it's 15 minutes or so. before the school day ends. So they won't actually use that schedule until towards the end of the school day. Another like really small random tidbit that I think that's important to know. It's kind of odd that we start the first day of school on a Tuesday because Tuesday is the only day of the week where we end school 20 minutes earlier. It's not exactly a good precedent setting day for us to start. So I just want to note that on that first day of school on September 3rd, the last block ends at 3:25 and the buses leave at 3:40. That's true for every Tuesday. But then starting on Wednesday, school ends at 3:45 and buses pull out at 3:55. So again, I wish the first day wasn't on the day that we had a schedule that was different than any other schedule, but here we are. Just so that you're aware of that. I'm gonna kind of jump around in some of these questions. The ice cream social is going to be held in. I'm just going to press answer live for this. The ice cream social is going to be held at the we have a breezeway parking lot. Actually, it's not. It's the one next to that. It's a small parking lot across from the tennis courts. We're planning on holding that Thursday at 2 p.m. and we're hoping that it's going to be sunny. Again, just jumping around questions. The Chromebook assignment agreement is actually on Aspen. So if you go on Aspen, I believe it's in maybe the bottom left corner when you log in. There's a set of forms you can fill out. The Chromebook loan agreement is one of those forms, and you fill it out there. I believe that both you and your student has to fill it out, and then from there, that should get you signed up. If there's any questions about that, though, you can feel free to email me. Just want to take a pause for a second because I feel like all these questions are mine. Hold on.
They
everyone-
100% are. I was going to say, Jason, just take the rest of them. They're all yours.
Thanks, boss. Okay, let's just take.
I can help if you need.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Let me just see. I just want to take a second to breathe and let's take a look at them. Okay. So if the schedule is not correct, I just want to say the questions out loud too. If the schedule is still not correct before the weekend, should we contact anyone in particular? So in terms of if there are any sort of scheduling issues, at this point, counselors do officially come back tomorrow. So if you do see any issues, please email your student's counselor and they'll be able to work with you on that. I do want to note that our main priority, as it always has been, is to make sure that every student has what they need in order to graduate and they have a minimum number of requirements, minimum number of credits, which is typically 72. There have been some students with like 69 or 66, which we've been like, okay, let's just let that one go for now. But we're really worried about, if a student comes into the first day of school with like 50, it's like, okay, we need to get this kid some extra classes. And also, part of the reason why that may sometimes happen is because a student may have only requested so much, and then some of those things conflict or things happen, and then we're not able to give them those classes. Thankfully, for students rising in grade 9, you have to take your math, you have to take your English, you have to take your science, you have to take your history. That's 48 already. You have to take a half year of wellness. That's 54. So most 9th graders are going to be, in a slightly better position. But counselor is the person you want to talk to for that.
Jason, before you start to answer the other questions, I also just want to put a plug in for someone who in her former life has created and hand scheduled close to 2,000 children. It is an extremely difficult thing to do. So if there are mistakes on the schedule, that's actually a pretty normal kind of thing that just happens in every single school in this country, in other countries as well. We are a public school. We're juggling close to 2,000 kids. We're juggling certain number of teachers, certain number of classes. Kids are not going to get everything that they ask for. Like Jason said, they will absolutely get what they need to eventually graduate in 4 years. Their counselors are creating 4-year success plans for them, but they may not get every elective that they want. And that's okay too. There could be a term in which your student has what we call a canceled class or a directed study. A directed study is if a 9th grader has a hole in their schedule, they will go to a designated space, which is a directed study. They will be held accountable for attendance there, for their phones, for all of that fun stuff. Cancel classes if a teacher is absent. So there's a couple of things that happen at Newton South. Newton South is an open campus for students, grades 10, 11, and 12. 9th graders is a closed campus. So they are in school from 9 a.m. to 3:45, except that Tuesday where the end of the day is a little bit odd, where we end 20 minutes early. And the only time that attendance does not count is that lion block on Tuesday. So kids can theoretically leave the building at 2:35. However, the buses will come after lion block, so they can leave, they have access to get home. It will just be after lion block. We also have a late bus for students who need help, athletics, all of that fun stuff. But again, just coming back to that schedule, don't be shocked if like in one of the terms, your child does not have a class, but they have a directed study instead. That is a very normal, typical thing that does happen. And Jason, which one would you like? Do you want to talk? We have a question about the arrival of buses and how will we know when they come to the store?
Yeah, I'll answer the bus question right after I answer some of the other like schedule related questions about like counselor
Sure.
assignments and stuff. So just to kind of specify Tammy's last comment too, like a typical grade 9 student will get between 72 and 84 credits. 72 credits is the equivalent of 6 full year classes, and 84 is the equivalent of 7. So it is normal, as Tammy is getting at, for a student to not have a completely full schedule with no free blocks at all. And there might be some, you know, it might be healthy in some cases to actually have a free block here and there, so they're not just going to class and class and class and class and class all day. But you know, every student is different, and as Tammy mentioned, students will work with their counselors to you know, form whatever plan makes the most sense for them. In terms of I just want to talk about the counselor assignment things. I was actually just looking at a sample parent account, and you should be able to see your student's counselor in Aspen right now, because I'm looking at, we have like a fake account to test things where we actually have the Brady Bunch as our students, if you will. And I was just looking at the 4 kids there, and I can see counselors for 2 of them. So you should also be able to see your students counselor in your family portal when you log in and just look at your students under the family top tab. You should be able to see that. And if you have absolutely no idea and it's like not showing up for some reason, just, you know, let us know and we can help you out with that. On that schedule on the first day, I believe that the counselor is also listed there. And as another fun fact, the number at the end of the advisory actually does tell you what house you're in as well. So it's exactly what you think it is, except for Goldrick, because we have 2 G's, so Goldrick is K. But other than that, it's what you expect. There's a question. So there's 2 bus questions, and then just one other schedule question. What should we do if we can't find our advisor on the first day of school schedule group? So we're gonna make sure that that doesn't happen, because you know, you're gonna be leaving from your the dean's welcome meetings to go to those breakout sessions, and they're going to be more than helpful to help figure out where you're supposed to go next. You're going to be split into your students are going to be split into one of 3 groups depending on what depending on what advisory they're in. And there will, I believe, also be student helpers from some of the older years who will also be able to help out with that too. So we're gonna make sure that that doesn't happen. That's my answer to that question.
And if anybody's lost on the first day because it's a big building and they don't know what they're doing, there will be hundreds of adults that help you out. We all actually, if you look at Jason, because he's the only one of us who's not slacking and is currently at work, he has a badge on. Every single, it's Ted. Oh, Ted's in his office too. I'm sorry, Teddy. But we always have our badges on. So please let your child know that if they're looking for an adult who they know that they can trust, every single staff member, when we are in the building, will have our badges on. So we are easy to identify.
All right, so if I may, let me answer. There is a question that's been sitting around for about 10 minutes. I feel bad. So what apps, text, logins do we need to set up? So the person's asking just Aspen, my school bucks, Parent Square, and then Schoology for the student. Others I'm missing. So, I mean, that sounds about right. Yeah, so as far as Parent Square is concerned, you should definitely try to log into that. That gives you a little bit more control over the settings. I believe the default settings is to text you whenever something's sent, and also to email you as well. There are some people who may not like the text messages, so it gives you the option to turn that off. I also recommend downloading the app because it just makes it easier to access the posts. But other than that, I mean, I think those things sound right. Aspen should already be set up for you, more or less. But that would kind of answer that question. As far as this, and while we're on the point of technology, the question about It doesn't appear that my son can forward school emails to his personal account or to me. Is that the reality? So I believe the answer to that question is yes. We have safeguards in place such that student emails can only receive emails from very specific sources. So even we sometimes run into awkward trouble with that, where we're using like another school service, but we can't actually send it to the school email because only certain things are accessible to that. So yes, the student school emails are protected in that sense that they're only to be used internally, and that's it. So you can use it, they can use it to email their teachers, we use it to email them, but they can't really use it to like sign up for some other service somewhere else because those messages coming to them will be blocked. So yes, that is intentional.
Right. So for example, if the PTSO needs our students, we do cleanups and things like that and volunteers, we do have to ask them for their personal emails because even Maggie and Barbara, as the PTSO co-presidents, do not have the ability to email our students, which is a safeguard, like Jason was saying, to put into place.
And then I'll answer a couple of bus questions before we kick it to the cell phone policy and lockers. So as far as how do we know what time the bus will arrive at each stop? That is a great question that in year 4, I do not have the exact answer to, because the way that the bus schedule is listed is it tells you when the bus is supposed to get here, and it lists a number of stops. So it doesn't give like an exact time of when it will hit that stop. I think the best way to kind of answer that question is kind of an end around answer, unfortunately, is the bus routes typically start a half hour before the bus gets here to Newton South. So if you're like the first bus stop on the route, I would try to get at the stop by like 8:15 or 8:20, or actually 8:10 or 8:15, to make sure that you get to that bus in time. Over time, that will get calibrated and you'll have a better idea of when it's supposed to show up. And I believe that in my last email I sent, I did put a picture of the not a picture, I'm sorry. I did put the PDFs of the bus schedules, and they're on the transportation website right now. I just had to wait until Friday because NPS like completely revamped their website at Friday at like 11 a.m. and they were waiting until the website revamp happened to put everything up. The late bus departs at 6:40. So sorry, the question is, what time does the late bus depart from school? The late bus leaves at 6:45. It's really designed for athletic practices. Not that anyone else can't take it, but the timing of it is really timed around that because I believe a lot of our practices are from 4:30 to 6:30. So 6:45 is when that late bus leaves. Yes, is when that late bus leaves.
Great. Dean Brown, since you were in the district working group for the cell phone policy that you will all be hearing about from our superintendent, would you like to kind of go over the salient points for?
Sure, I would be happy to. And I know this is a question for a lot of parents and students too, but we've been working with Newton North and Newton South together to work on a cell phone policy in terms that it would be the same for both schools. So it will be communicated to students and families soon, but cell phones are to be placed in a cell phone holder at the beginning of class, and they are not to be removed even if students are leaving the classroom to go to the bathroom, that they stay in that holder during the beginning of class. A through G blocks, including win blocks. So that really is a place where we don't want the distraction. And it really comes from a lot of research around cell phones and the distraction it can cause, the social emotional benefits of not having the phone on you, even in your pocket. So that will be something we will be working with students and families on to help them with that process, because it will be new for our students of South, so our returning students and the incoming ninth graders. Students will have access to it in the hallways during lunchtime. And then during class, Chromebooks and laptops will be used when directed by the teacher. So there'll be an appropriate time for you to be using the laptop or Chromebook, and there'll be time when they're doing classwork, having a class discussion, and we shouldn't see those out. So we're going to work with families and students. The deans really know that this, for some students, they're attached to their cell phone. Some adults, we're attached to our cell phone. So we really want to work with them, help them, make sure that they're successful, and there'll be a lot of communication home. So it's a work in progress, but we're really excited for the students to be able to stay distracted free when learning.
Thank you so much. Before we answer the question about the locker, actually, Doc Martin, do you want to talk about just attendance, how we record that and what that means for students? I think that's important for parents to know. And I think it pairs nicely with the cell phone.
Absolutely. So in a nutshell, we want students to be in school, in class as often and as frequently as they can and as consistently as they can. And in the same breath, we completely understand that students are sometimes absent, whether it's a sickness or they have to travel or they have to be on a field trip with the school or they have to be with their family for some commitment. So ultimately, you have excused absences and unexcused absences. And this is a policy or a standard rather set forth by the school committee that we've tried very hard to implement and make very clear to students and teachers and families as well. So any day that you know your student won't be in a class, you will fill out a Google form that will go through your student's house office. So I'm the Dean of Wheeler House. So any student who's in my house would fill out the Google form for Wheeler House explaining when the student will be absent, the reason why the student is absent, and then that will be incorporated in our Aspen system as excused or unexcused. Ultimately, a student gets 5 excused absences in each class, each term. So if it is excused and I teach English and Mark is in my class and there's 5 excused absences, that would mean he is fine. He still gets the grade he earned for my class. So he's a wonderful English student. He got an A and he met the attendance standard. So he gets a Y for yes, meeting the attendance standard in my English class for term 1. Let's say in term 2, Mark still earns an A. He's a wonderful student, but for whatever reason, he earned more than 2 unexcused absences. He gets 3 unexcused absences. So he still gets his A, but he might get an N for that one term. In terms of how it ends up for the end of the year for Mark's grade for his credits for the class, if Mark has only earned 1 N in my class over the 4 terms, Mark earns a Y for the year. He would get an A, a Y, and his full credits. If for some reason Mark has had more than 1 N, meaning he's earned more than 1 term with too many unexcused absences, Mark may have a reduction of his credits in my class. Please rest assured that we will be in communication with you and with your student, as will the teacher. The teacher is really going to be the first front runner to explain a lot of this to you about the specific class. But if you ever have questions, God forbid your student gets really sick, don't worry. We have things that we could help the student with. We are on your kid's side. We want to help, and we understand that there are obligations and things that your student and you have no control over. If you have questions or you know your student is going to be absent for a period of time, it's very helpful if you get ahead of it and talk to the dean, the guidance counselor, and most importantly, the teacher of that student so that we can make a game plan, explain how your student could either make up the time if it's more than 1 N for a term, or certainly get ahead of the game in terms of getting their homework done or the content done. That's very important. If you have any questions about that, we are going to give a PowerPoint presentation to students very early in the school year and map it all out so we can explain it all to them. We are also going to give it on a Zoom call or panel, and we'll also have frequently asked questions to send out to you on back to school night. This is something that students really get the hang of and they understand as they go along. We want them to be in school as often as possible, and we want to make sure that they are not missing any of their learning along the way too. Again, there is a way for them to make up some of the time if they are absent and they can't handle that too. So we're here to help. We have things called hacks, house attendance coordinators who will also be in communication with you. So if you have specific questions, you have another support in the building, and we can certainly help answer any questions in tandem with them too.
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute. Thank you so much, Meg. That was very thorough, much appreciated. And if you said this, forgive me. Just the attendance, all of it has to be the Google form that now is in different colors. It's even if you call in, the House Secretary will direct you to fill out the attendance form, and that's actually a state requirement. I know it's tedious and I know it's time consuming, but we do need records of that. So even if you're sending in a doctor's note or whatever, you're uploading it to that Google form. Question in the chat, Dean Delicandro, if you can answer that for us. How do students apply for a lockup? That's a great question. I don't think I know the answer to that.
Yeah. Any student that wants a locker can come to the House office, speak to the House Administrative Assistant, and that they will assign them a locker. We have locks that they get assigned as well. And that's what they do. They can do it the first day, second day, whenever they feel like they need a locker. And those lockers are assigned in the house area. So for a Cutler student, that locker is going to be in the Cutler house area. So it's a very simple process. They just go to the House office, ask the House Administrative Assistant, and they will be assigned a locker and given a lock.
And just fun fact, in all the years that I've been a high school teacher, administrator / my entire career, because I've only ever been in high school, nobody uses lockers. Kids don't use their lockers anymore. So your kid might ask for one, but don't be surprised if they don't actually use it. Jason, we can see the technology guidelines on Aspen, but it's not clear how to sign or approve it.
I think if you, I can put my email in the chat. If you send, or actually, yeah, I'm trying to think because ideally you want to just email and ask about that at that point, and just kind of see, because I just went back to the parent account and double checked, and I do see it there, but I don't actually know exactly what you're seeing. So I would say that the best person to email, if you know who they are, would be the House Secretary for that house, and just ask about that form and say, hey, I'm having trouble finding the Chromebook agreement form. We can also check to see if you've already happened to sign it too, because again, like the vast majority of students already signed it. So check in with your student's House Secretary and ask them if you've already signed the form, and if not, we can get you directed to how to sign it.
We have no open questions right now. We do have a few more minutes, so we're happy to answer anything else. I would ask maybe Maggie, Barbara, and Melissa, as parents, what advice do you have for our incoming group of parents as well? If you have any.
I would
Yes.
just say, my
Go for
daughter
it, Barbara.
Subi had her locker and she loved it very much. And a little fun fact is that it's not for all 4 years. You get a new locker each year. So don't leave your stuff in it over the summer.
That is 100% accurate. Yes. It will get thrown out if you leave your stuff in there. Yes.
Yeah, the one tip I would like to give the parents is back to school night comes up really fast. It's on September 12th, and parking at back to school night is a lot. 300 some staff members, maybe less if it's just teachers, plus all the parents, plus the students leaving from sports practices. It's a zoo. So please, please, please carpool with your neighbors and friends and come super early and wear comfortable shoes, because you're going to be walking to and from the car, and you're going to be walking a lot in the high school.
I would just say one piece of advice is, I think all kids are a little overwhelmed on the first day or the first week, and everyone really gets the hang of it after a week or two, and not to stress about being late to class on the first week, because it's a big school to navigate, and there's teachers, everyone in the hallway to just point you in the right direction. So just to calm your kids' nerves, that everyone's nervous walking in, but also they get it. They get it faster than we do, because I still get lost around the school sometimes. So
Excellent. We have 2 back to school questions. If I can't make it, what's the best way to get any materials or tips? Great question. I think if you can't make it to back to school, just try and get like email your kids' teachers, try and get conversations in that way. That's probably the best way to do it. Is it in person or Zoom? It is, the back to school night is in person.
And just to clarify with that question, I think, and the person who asked this question can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that question has to do with the difference between back to school night and the New to South family night that's on September 5th. And the September 5th one is a Zoom where we go into detail about just advice for students and so on and so forth. So it's a much more detailed, it's more presentation than this, which is really more Q&A. But that's really geared towards students who are new to the building and just talking about advice and stuff. Back to school night is really a thing that is relevant yearly and has more to do with seeing your students' teachers for that given year and, you know, what their expectations are and just really getting to literally see them. So instead of seeing Mr. Williams, you actually know what Mr. Williams looks like and, you know, their mannerisms and what your student is actually seeing well, 3 times a week. And just being able to see the building and actually walk through it and understand like the like really just kind of it's literally back to school for that kind of purpose and seeing your friends too, because I've seen a number of families who are just like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, how's it going, we should hang out sometime. And that's like also a really, really awesome part of it too. I just find it really nice. But just to kind of reiterate the point about the wearing comfortable shoes and stuff, our building, well, it's interesting. I'll leave it at that for now. But the biggest thing about our building that I think is important to understand is that it's wide and not tall. Like we have a very wide building that spans a long distance. And it's important as you're going around the school that you make sure that you are wearing comfortable shoes and are prepared to walk a decent amount, because there are some distances that are not too bad. And then there are some distances where you feel like you might as well be walking into a different building. Another fun fact that I will share with the 40 some of you who are lucky to be on this call is that we also have a very interesting building in that our second floors are not universally connected, which is a weird thing to say out loud, but something you really should be aware of. So like the 6,000 second floor is not the same as the 4,000 second floor, and you do have to come down to go back up. And that part's a little bit weird, but just be ready for that as you go. And we'll give more advice about back to school night as we get closer to back to school night. While we're on the topic of walking, just to answer this, how much time do kids have between classes question really quick. 5 minutes is the amount of time that they have, which at first blush will sometimes, I remember during an earlier meet and greet, we answered that and there was a bit of a reaction from the crowd, but I will say that you can get from any point A in this building to any point B in this building within a 5-minute time span. So for example, if I'm going to Mark Banks's office from where I currently am in the main office, I can get there in about 3-ish or so. I might be a ever so slightly fast walker. Mark can probably get there in 2 because he has a bigger stride than I do. But for the most part, people can get from any point A to point B within that 5-minute time period. And I think one of our teachers who was at another meet and greet did mention it's just important to manage that time well. Can students come to back to school night? Yes, they can. It might be slightly awkward in some situations, depending, but there definitely are some students who I feel like would want to come, especially if for the family, say English may not be their first language and the student is really helpful to help guide them around, or other sorts of reasons. So they're definitely invited. We're not going to kick your kids out, come on, but they're definitely invited to come in as well. It's mostly family members instead, but yeah, they're definitely welcome to come as well. And then there is a bump about the question about when the bus comes to each stop. Yeah, so there isn't an exact time. The bus schedule, I put the bus schedules in the last update I posted. So if you log into Parent Square underneath Tammy's message that was sent on Monday, you should see the message I sent on Friday. In those bus schedules, it really only just says when the order of the stops. I think it says when the bus route starts, the order of the stops, and when the bus gets here, or when it should get here. But again, it's going to require some calibration. So as the year goes on, you will start to have a better idea of like, okay, this bus usually gets here at like 8:27 or 8:25 or whatever. And we work closely with transportation to make sure everyone's taken care of on that front too.
having 3 kids who have ridden the bus here in Newton, Oak Hill and South, they do leave quite promptly from that first stop. Usually the bus is waiting, kids are right there, and off they go.
Thank you, Maggie. All right, it is 7 o'clock, which brings us to the end of our hour. We just wanted to say on behalf of our PTSO, our boosters, my admin team, thank you so very much for being here. I hope we answered some of your questions. You're going to have more, and that's okay. Your students are going to have more, and that's okay too. We are so excited to see them next week. We cannot wait to welcome them. Mark and I will be at the main entrance, dancing to music. That'll be very awkward for kids, but we love it. So we will be there to welcome them, as will all of my deans. They will be at bus loops, as will Jason. So we look forward to meeting your student next week and meeting you on back to school night if you can make it. If you need anything, please email your house office, email your counselors, email your deans. We're all here to support you. So once again, thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a wonderful night. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you.